Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 11th of October 2023. Coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G70RP.
Oh, hang on.
Lovely to see you.
What have we done?
Well, I don't know. You pressed the wrong button.
Pressed
That's
the
not like
wrong
you.
button.
Not like you. It's more like me.
There we go. That's the right button.
That's the right button.
So you know who I am.
That's her and that's me. On tonight's show, press the right button.
Press the right button.
Here we go. We welcome Glenn, W0GJ, who's going to give us a talk about the Sable Island DXpedition. We look back with video and pictures from a couple of events, well, one event this month, and we find out what on earth this is. We've had quite a few entries, but how shall I say this? Nobody's got it quite right. So if you know what that is, specifically what that is, just got time to put it onto BATC or Facebook and we'll read your answer along with everybody else's. But first we start with club news. Well, I say club news, it's more RSGB news really. It's about the RSGB convention which is coming up this weekend. This weekend sees the RSGB convention in Kents Hill Conference Centre at Milton Keynes with a wide range of talks, discussions, a build-a-thon and social events. Bookings for packages with accommodation and dinner have now closed, but you can still buy day tickets on the door. So if you want to make it over to Milton Keynes, you can just turn up, buy a day ticket on the door. I think they're around about £20, £25, something like that for the day. Now, if you can't make it there though, why don't you watch the live stream? Because Tammy, Kevin and I are going to be heading over there on Friday morning to set up a 6-camera live studio to live stream some of the talks, plus some special interviews and other events from the show. In fact, we've got a picture here to show you what it looked like last year. That was a picture the RSGB took. There's Kevin there, you can see on the left, and Tammy and me are actually just behind that monitor there.
See the top of your head.
See the top of your head. How can you tell which was me and which was you?
Well,
fair enough. Anyway, seriously, that's how you do need to register this year. It's not just going to be open on YouTube, so you do need to register to watch it. But it's free and it's easy to register. So just go to that link there, rsgb.org/live stream. You can register for Saturday or Sunday or both days. We'd love to see you, or we won't see you, but you'll see us and lots of other people as well. We've got quite a lot of people from the club going. I think there's in fact 3 tables just for the dinner on the Saturday night. So it's going to be really good. But if you can't make it, and if you haven't booked and you can't make it there, I hope that will be the second best thing to come along to see the live stream. Just make sure you do register. Okay, just to mention, because so many people are actually going to the convention, we've postponed Koblenz by 1 week. So Koblenz this month will be put off until Saturday the 21st of October, which is Saturday week. Now, about 10 days ago now, we had a Sunday-friendly direction-finding fox hunt to find a fox transmitting from a mystery location somewhere in Norfolk. So 6 teams set out from Thorpe Recreation Ground, and I think we've got some pictures to show you now of some of the motley crew. There's one of the motley crew, or the summer wine crew, and they set off at 10 o'clock from Thorpe Recreation Ground to try and find the fox. The team who found the fox in the shortest distance by the finish time was going to be the winner. And I've got one more picture I think to show you. Yeah. So I think we captured most of Stuart there, top left, and Zena I think behind the car, just there.
Here's
and
the fox.
This is where the fox is. That probably doesn't mean much to you unless you know the person involved. Well, it was actually for the first time I think we did it from someone's house. It was a good suggestion that someone made. So Tony M0TDK did it from his home QTH near Beccles. However, of course, if he'd done it with his voice, some people may know where he lived, and that would give them an instant clue. So I was the voice of the fox. I sat there and did the transmissions every 5 minutes for 1 minute. And people set off from Thorpe Recreation Ground. The most difficult thing to decide, of course, was which side of the river to go. And at least 2 teams went the wrong side, with one having to take the Reedham Ferry across. That's where the fox was transmitting from. And but it was a lot of fun. Actually, maybe thinking about it, the ones who took Reedham Ferry to cross the river, maybe we should measure the distance across the water there, because that should be added on the distance, because they weren't moving, if you see what I mean. Anyway, it was a lot of fun.
We'll let them have it if they had to cross the ferry.
Well, I suppose so. It says it was a lot of fun. And many people were very smug that Team Bitten DX went the wrong side of the river, though please don't read this out. Oh. Anyway, Team Tornado were the only team to find the fox before 12:30 deadline, and they did it in 23.6 miles, which if you have a look, was very good. And there's the team on the right, and there's Tony and his dog, who was the host, and the fox on the left-hand side there. Thank you very much to everybody who took part in it. And at the end of that, we thought, being a Sunday and being more leisurely than when we do it in the evening during the week, we went along for a Sunday lunch, as you do. And there's us all sitting at a very long table at a lovely pub, which Tony arranged for us all. So we can see at that end, and then we can see the opposite end of the pub.
That is a massive piece of fish there.
Oh, where? Oh, that's Paul. Oh, I see what you mean, yes. No, that really, they were very generous portions. Some of us had roast beef and stuff, and then others had other meals as well, but it was really good fun. So thank you very much to everybody taking part, and a special thanks to Tony M0TDK for being a great sport to offer to host this. I've just, I know it's silly. Did you just put that picture out there? Yeah. I just spotted there how much I look like my brother, which is ridiculous thing for me to say. But do you see what I mean? If that hadn't have been knowing that I was sitting there next to Lynn, it looks like my brother. Okay. That's scary if I'm starting to look like him. Obviously deteriorating. Anyway, thank you very much, especially to Tony, for arranging it and for being the fox. And he's enjoyed it. So, in fact, he enjoyed it so much that he's got the bug, and he's starting to design and build some direction finding equipment to take part himself next year when we do it all again. So watch out, I think. Thanks very much to everybody who took part. Now, I've got members' news now, and only one bit of news this week, so I hope you'll all keep in touch. This is actually also from Tony M0DDK, who writes to say that he went to say farewell to Silent Key Tom Bartlett G3 ITB at the Waveney Crematorium this morning. Although there was no service, as he hadn't wanted one, just friends and family reminiscing and talking about him, which he said was a very nice way to say goodbye. And afterwards there was a gathering at Hardley Village Hall where rumours of champagne turned out to be true. And I was glad to be there, although sadly, since I only heard of the event on the previous evening, that it was limited the number of friends, maybe from the radio amateur world, from being there. But both events were well attended by as many friends and neighbours. And I'm sorry we only sent that on a late newsletter during the night, because I only heard last night as well. But anyway, thanks for that news, Tony. But that's all the club news we've had from members news for this week. So please do keep in touch. It doesn't have to be radio related either. It can be just stories of your holiday away maybe, or something you've done radio, maybe a project that you're doing. We'd love to keep hearing from you with pictures or just a few words. We'd love you to do it, and you can send it to this address, radio@dcpmicro.com. It's the same email address every week, and if we get it by about 3 o'clock on a Wednesday, we'll usually carry it that evening. So we would love to hear from you. Now, little people.
Little people.
You thought I'd forgotten, didn't you?
No. Here you go. Here's a little people for this week. Have you ever wondered what to do with old batteries?
Yes. Oh, that's good. Oh, I like it. I love these ones. And on the wall, they've got those coin cell CR2032s.
Yeah.
Does look good, doesn't it? Isn't that good? Miniature-calendar.com, a new picture every day, and Tammy picks one for us. I like the way they've lit up the detail underneath the frying pan. They've just lit that up with something.
Yeah.
That's very, very good. Thank you, Tammy. Now we move on to that competition that we set 2 weeks ago tonight, and we showed you this picture and said, what on earth is this? And what on earth is this? Before I read anybody else, is there? Oh, some guesses. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So Tom Miller, GAXQD, I think, says, I think the what is part of the innards of an antenna rotator. Long time since I had one of those. 1985, he said. And Paul, G3VPT, says, what is it? Is it part of a timer to turn on an item from the mains? Oh, well, we'll tell you in a minute. Nick now says, who signed himself on this CT7 M0HGU, He says, is it the inside of an electric toothbrush head? And by the way, CT7 stroke M0HGU, I think either means he was in Portugal when he read it, or it's a postcode for Canterbury in Kent. So I don't know which was more glamorous, but anyway, thanks for sending that in, John. John?
John G3XLL. It's obviously a whatchamacallit for removing a thingamybog from a hoojamaflip. Simple.
I'd love to say it was that. You never know. Nev M0NFY says, another wild guess. Is it part of a VHS tape transport mechanism?
Mike GAEEY, the latest mystery object looks like part of a braiding machine or not. Or not. Not.
Not with a K. It looks better on paper, Mike, than it does when we read it out. But anyway, one had a K and one didn't. Steve M7CNI, I believe the photo is the inner workings of a Walter and Gregson gas meter. Not sure when they were in circulation.
Bruce, no, have I missed one? No, I haven't. Bruce G4 KZT, I think it's a reduction drive gearbox.
Okay, and Tony M0TDK says, this week's item is something I seem to recall seeing before, but cannot exactly remember. Clearly it's something else and designed to rotate in only one direction. Perhaps part of a knitting or sewing machine. No, sewing machines, we've done that, moved on. Now. Anyway.
Do you want to know what it is?
I do.
Okay.
Please press that button, Tammy, and say it is.
It is something from a telly.
Yeah, I'll read you exactly what it was. So Martin G7UGB, thank you for sending this, and you did fox everybody if we're being precise about what it was. I guess you could argue it was some kind of gearbox. But anyway, I'll read you what he put. It's a fireball turret tuning head from a 50s or 60s black and white television. Each of the gear heads tune an individual core slug which presets the channel. As you turn the large channel knob, it selects the gear that you had preset different channels too. So with this one you could tune 13 channels, but you probably were only able to get 2 or 3 in your area. A bit different, and a bit different now, as he says. Quite right, more than 2 or 3 channels. Second photo is the unit in the TV, which gives the game away a bit, as it's a manky capacitor due for changing. There we go. Yeah, we can see the capacitor. So that's what it was, and I'm surprised because some of you I know were involved in the repair trade of televisions. At least 2 I can think of who are probably watching tonight, and maybe you would have recognised that from the 50s and 60s TV. Anyway, you foxed them, I think. Thank you very much to Martin G7UGB. Now, before we show you the next subject, I've got to say to you, we are really, really, really running out. In fact, tonight's... Should I say them? Hello?
What? That I had to go raid the buildings?
Well, it's one of ours that we had in mind for this. So we only have very, very few left, and I wanted to make this week's not easy, but you know, one that you could get. So before we show you that, just a reminder, if you've got anything in your home that is an unusual object, maybe a tool or a gadget or widget, certainly doesn't have to be radio or radio related, please send us the picture and a picture of it in use or something if you can, and we will feature it on What on Earth Is This? Anyway, from this last week's competition picture to this week's, do you know what on earth is this?
And it's not the map underneath of the world. This just happens to be the...
That's what you photographed it on.
That's my
we literally did this map about half and 3/4 an hour ago.
Yep.
Do you know what that is?
I do, yeah.
I know you do. You nabbed it off me. Does that help?
No.
Probably not. If you know what that object is or what it's for, drop us an email to radio@dcpmicro.com. We're meeting again next week, actually, for NARC Live. So you've only got 6.8 days or something to send it in. Let me know by next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Send it to the usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com.
Or also send to that address any what on earth.
Any what on earth? Yes, please, yes. Anything at all for the programme. Please send it to us, including... I mean, you must have some of those gadgets, those KTEL and Ronco and all those things.
You used to see in Woolies with the DVD, like the JML.
Exactly. JML is the modern equivalent, I think, of KTEL and Ronco. Yeah, anything like that that you think might fox and entertain, please do send them to us as soon as you can. So, let's before we meet tonight's guest, let's have a look at what's happening at the club this week. As I mentioned, the Koblensked has been postponed just for a week. so that's not happening this Saturday. But on Sunday, we've got the GB2RS news at 7 o'clock on GB3MB. On Monday night, we've got the Monday Night Net on GB3MB at 7:30, and then at 8 o'clock, the 80 metre CW net on 3.543 megahertz. And then on Wednesday, October the 18th, that's a week tonight, we've got another NARC live online when we're going to be talking to and listening to Dave KJ9I on a 6 metre EME, which is Earth, Moon, Earth. So we all know, probably anyway, we've done enough programs over the last few years on here about 6 meters, the magic band and what you can do with it. But have you ever thought of talking to the moon and back? So that's what Dave's going to be talking to us about next week. So we look forward to that.
Will the moon, like, talk back to you?
Well, not talk back, but reflect. You just watch next week and you'll find out. Honestly, you will. So, as I said, please let us have those pictures of mystery. And also your news and everything. We'd love to receive it. Drop it to the usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com. And also, of course, we have our club card, which we send nearly one of these, I should think, on average every week. And we're very happy to send this special card to anybody you think will be cheered up and important to keep in touch. Just send your name and the address of them to this email address, radio@dcpmicro.com, and we'll be pleased to send them a card. Thanks very much. Now, over the years, we've heard about some of the DXpeditions that go on, but it's wonderful when we have someone to come on and talk about it, because some of these DXpeditions are incredible, and I'm sure tonight's is going to be no different. Because tonight, to talk about the Sable Island DXpedition, we have Glenn, W0GJ. Hello, Glenn.
Hi, how are you, David?
I'm good, thank you. Lovely to meet you, and thank you very much for doing this talk for us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. You know, I have a couple comments. You know, that TV tuner, you know, I was 6 years old in 1956 when we got our first TV, and, you know, life was so simple then. We only had a few choices to make. We only could choose between 2 channels, maybe 3, you know.
That's what Martin said. I mean, amazing, isn't it, to think now that we've got this many to choose from, really. It's almost too much, I think, the choice.
Yep. And, of course, it was good laughter and comedy back. Good, you know, it was good stuff back then too. And also Dave KJ9I, that should be a very interesting talk. Right now I'm tuned up on 6 meters, waiting for my moon to set a little bit so I can work the Swains Island DXpedition, Whiskey 8 Sierra. They're on EME right now, but I need to, my lobes, I need to be about 10 degrees or less for them to work, because I don't have elevation on my antennas. So anyway.
Okay, so you're not going to quite get up there, but that's going to be really good. Before we move on as well, there's a couple of things. Firstly, and I didn't tell you this before when we just connected up sort of 30 minutes ago or so, but Tammy says to me that in the States you're going to have a full eclipse tomorrow.
It's on Saturday. It's an annular eclipse. So the moon is at apogee, so it's farther away, so there's going to be a ring of fire in the sky. It's not going to be a total eclipse. That's on Saturday.
Wow, that is going to be good. That is, I envy you. And the second thing is, but the behind you, we see a really impressive array of radios, and there are several people, including one in particular, one of our members, Roy G3ZIG, who would recognise those instantly as Collins radios.
Yes, I grew up just about 40 miles from the Collins factory, and I always wanted Collins radio, but I could never afford it as a kid or teenager, or even later in life. And a few years ago, on my 50th anniversary of being a ham, there was an estate sale, and this pristine equipment was there, and I got it for, I think, a very good price. And I use it every day. In fact, it's still cooling down from just talking to some friends just before I signed in here. So I use it every day, so it's not just sitting there as an ornament.
No, excellent. Well, that's the best way for all equipment, isn't it? Keep using it. So,
yep.
Anyway, thanks very much for that little introduction to other things, but you're really here to tell us about the Sable Island DXpedition. So we look forward to that. And as always, for you at home, if you've got any questions or comments to make to Glenn, then ask them either on BATC or Facebook, and we'll be sure to read those out to Glenn at the end. But now over to you, Glenn.
Okay, well, thanks. Well, let's go to Sable Island. I've been to a lot of places. I've been to Heard Island. I've been to Bouvet. I said to Bouvet. I was not on Bouvet. I was on that failed trip in 2019, the 3Y0Z. And, you know, some of these places are really hard to get to, but Sable Island was gentlemanly in a nice sense because you could fly to it. So this is a talk on Sable Island that was in March of this year. This is our banner, and you can see more of the Sable ponies and horses, and you can see the list of the operators there on the side. Sable is about 300 kilometers east of Halifax, Nova Scotia, out in the Atlantic. It's on the edge of the continental shelf. And it's a big, long sandbank, about 43 kilometers long and a kilometer wide. And it's called the Graveyard of the Atlantic because there's been more than 400 documented shipwrecks since 1500. The last shipwreck was, I think, in the late 80s when a yacht lost all of its electrical power and landed on the island. So it doesn't happen very often anymore with all the GPS and electronic stuff that we have these days. This is the team. You recognize most of them that have been previous DXpeditions or very active contesters. Won't dwell on this a lot, but we had a very, very good team. And I'll tell you why there's 8 here in a little bit. We were supported primarily by the Northern California DX Foundation, of which I'm the secretary. I have my shirt on here today. And the primary purpose for this picture is to show our new clothing. We had a new hooded sweatshirt and a new beanie, and they really came in handy on Sable Island in March when it was so cold and snowy. And the permit took a long time to get. It used to be years ago, before 2013, when the weather people operated Sable Island. You'd say, can I come to Sable and do a DXpedition? And they would say, how soon can you get here and how many people can you bring? Well, after it became a national park reserve, that all changed. It's sort of like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They say, no, you can't go. So it took a long time to build a relationship with them and educate them what ham radio was about and why Sable was unique and things like that. But another problem was that no visitors can stay overnight. Researchers can stay overnight, but visitors can't. So we were officially doing ionospheric propagation research. And sometimes you got to play a little bit of poker. You know, if you want to take 12 people, I mean, if you want to take, let's say you want a small crew, let's say 8 or 10, you say, well, we'd like to take 12 people, and say, no, you can only take 8. Well, rats. Okay, I'm happy, you know. So you got to play a little poker. So we asked for 10 operators, and they said you can take 8, and that's exactly what we wanted. But overall, Parks Canada was extremely cooperative, and they really helped a lot with a lot of the details and worked us into their schedule. We were scheduled to go in sometime in the fall of 2020 when COVID hit. And then the next year was closed, and then 2022, in the fall, they said, you can go for 10 days, but we'll give you 2 weeks notice. Well, most of us couldn't really commit to that schedule, but they said in March, we can fix a date in March where you go and it will be written in stone and you can go in March of 2023. And we said, yes, let's do that. So that's what we did. And you can see overall, Sable was only 49 in the most wanted ranking at the time. But, you know, in Asia, you can see it's in the top 10. And surprisingly, in Eastern Europe, it's up there pretty high. And we got there with an airplane and a helicopter. And we chose both because if one couldn't fly, the other could, and they can make 2 trips in a day. But the biggest overall problem with this DXpedition is that we were limited to 2,965 pounds maximum. We could not take any more than that in these combined in these 2 planes. And all of us actually lost weight, you know, to make this weight goal. And to make a long story short, we were just exactly right on for the airplane, and we were 1 pound overweight. We had 2,966 pounds, and that included us, our clothing, our food, our bedding. Oh yeah, there's some radios and antennas and coax and things to take. So that was the biggest juggling factor getting out to Sable Island, was limiting our weight for 8 people. And you can see here in the picture, they're even weighing toilet paper, you know, down to the ounce. So that's how critical the weight and balance was on these planes. And there we are, loaded up, ready to go. These are the guys on the helicopter. They had to wear, the helicopter guys had to wear survival suits. So there were 5 in the helicopter and 3 of us in the airplane with all of our gear. As we approached Sable Island, it was a beautiful day, hardly a cloud in the sky. And you can see this is the western end of Sable. And this is what it looks like as you get closer. This is the runway, and here's the plane on final approach. And this is the compound on Sable Island. And the population is 3. There's a park manager, there's a maintenance person, and there's a lady named Zoe Lucas who's lived there for 40 years. She's made a lifetime career of studying the horses on Sable Island. And the house on the left is where some of the crew live. The weather station now is unmanned. It's all remotely controlled and automated. And the house in the middle with the chimney is the guest quarters. That's where the researchers stayed, and that's where we were lived. And the other buildings you see contain equipment and vehicles and other things. The building on the very right contains 2 big generators. There's power 24/7, and there's Starlink internet. So it was very nice. So this is our living quarters, and we can see we didn't have to put our antennas very high, only 10 or 12 feet. I'll get to that in a little bit. This was the dining room in the house, and it was perfect for setting up the radios. You'll see them set up here in just a minute. And this room was where we had the VHF and UHF equipment. There were 6 bedrooms that were just like this, couple bathrooms, and these were upstairs, a couple bathrooms upstairs, very nice. There was a nice little sunroom where you could go and soak up the rays of the sun, but most of the time it looked like this, you know, kind of snowy and rain and sleet against the window, sticking to the window. That's what it looked like a lot of the time. And it's out in the Atlantic, very windy at times. And you can see that that here winds this day were 60 miles an hour, you know, pretty windy all the time. And when you compare it to, say, Bouvet, which was just a few weeks before, it's not unlike Bouvet. And you can see the temperature's about the same, maybe a few degrees Fahrenheit warmer. But basically, it's about the same weather as Bouvet, except you can fly to it, you know, in just a couple hours. So it has Bouvet beat in a lot of ways in that respect. There's about 600 wild horses on the island. The story behind how they got there is they could have survived from a shipwreck, or sometime in the 1800s there was an attempt at some farming on the island, and these might have been the work ponies that were used for the farming. But regardless, there's about 600 of them now. They've kind of evolved into their own species, subspecies, and they're considered a separate breed. And they're called wild horses, but they're not wild at all. They'll come right up to you. We're supposed to stay 20 meters away from them, but they can't read the rules, so they come right up to us. But there's been a lot of inbreeding with these horses, and we even saw a 2-headed horse, a horse with 2 heads, and here it is. I'm sure that horse has 2 heads. Anyway, you can see the fence, electric fence there that ropes off the compound. They've eaten. You can see how severely overgrazed they've done to the island, but where the electric fence is, they can't graze. But you know, this time of year in March, the end of winter, there was hardly anything left for them to eat. There's about 500,000 seals of 3 different species that live on the island. And just before we arrived, a team of researchers departed that had been there for about 6 weeks. They were tagging all of the baby seals for research. So they spent 6 weeks tagging all the baby seals. And on there's several freshwater ponds. Almost said inland, but there really is no inland because it's such a narrow strip of land. But there's several freshwater ponds along the island, and that's what the horses use for drinking water. The white dots you see there are some seagulls in the distance. And this is what we saw almost every morning. You can see the flags out straight, pretty windy. It got below freezing every night and snowed. Here we are putting up the 160 and 80 meter vertical that had just come back from the Galapagos Islands. And of course, like I said, it gets a little windy there at times. So it still worked. These are antennas, and again, like I said, they went up very high. We had verticals for some of the lower bands. This theodolite view shows that we're about 45 feet above sea level. And remember, this is a sandbar, so the ground is almost non-existent. So electrically, these antennas were all about 45, 50 feet in the air. So that's why they perform so well and not having to be up so high above the ground. We had 4 K3s and 3 KPA 500s. So this is our operating position, as you can see. And we had more fun than anybody should ever be allowed to have. It was a lot of fun. And I had just had some shoulder surgery, and I was in a mobilizer, so I couldn't move my arm. But this just proves that I can operate 2 FT8 stations with one arm tied behind my back. This is the VHF UHF station. We worked 1 station on FT8 that was in Nova Scotia, and the rest of the 6-meter contacts were on meteor scatter on 5260. And then we made quite a few moon bounce. I think there are almost 500, 490 some moon bounce contacts made with on 2 meters and 440. So this is the moon bounce array we use for those frequencies. And of course, we're kind of north. You kind of know what this is. Some Aurora. Oh, yeah. The Aurora Oval came down over us over the weekend of the WPX contest. And this is our score, almost 29 million points. And that beat the Canadian record by over 20 million points. So we were pretty proud of that in spite of all the Aurora problems we had at the time. This is our schedule. We operated in, there were 3 teams with 2 or 3 people on a team. And we had shifts of 3 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours. And that way we slowly rotated through the gray line. And we learned where the band openings were to the hard-to-reach areas like Asia and Oceania. And even though we had 4 radios and maybe only 2 people on a team, we all pitched in, and there was never, ever a radio that just sat there. All 4 radios were in use 24/7. There was never a break in the radios. And, you know, because of our weight, we had to take freeze-dried food, and after about a week of eating freeze-dried food, the pilot of the airplane, this is her, was feeling sorry for us. And when she brought some supplies out for the Park Service, she brought some steaks. And even with one arm tied behind my back, when you're hungry after eating freeze-dried food, you can barbecue steaks. So the thumbs up here is not for my cooking, of course, but for the fun that we had on Sable. That was one of the most fun DXpeditions I've ever been on. You know, a great bunch of guys to work with. Everybody had everybody's back. We were always helping each other operate and make sure that there was no radio that was unattended. And the Murray, our leader, he's been out to Sable about 7 or 8 times, and he has never been out and back without a weather delay. Well, we got out there on the day we were supposed to go, and this is the day we were supposed to go back. It was a beautiful day on Sable, but Halifax was totally fogged in all day. And so the Park Service, we had all of our antennas down, everything packed, ready, you know, for the plane and helicopter to pick us up. So we weren't on the air. So the Park Service took us to the end of the island. Quite a ways away. We saw a lot of old shipwrecks and things, and a lot of wildlife along the way. And this theodolite view picture is at the very northeastern end of the island in the GN03. And there are actually 2 grid, 1 subgrid and 1 grid that was on Sable that is gone thanks to Hurricane Fiora last fall. So the X marks the spot where we were on the island, and these 2 grids are totally gone after the hurricane. The sand is shallow, but it's underwater, and the Park Service says it will eventually come back, but they don't know when or how long, you know, it will take, you know, for that to come back. But there used to be 3 grids that you could operate from on Sable, but not anymore. There's just 2 that are left. And so the next day it was very windy. You can see the sand blowing just like the snow blows in the winter. And it was about just above freezing, and the wind chill was just horrendous that day. It was very, very cold. So we loaded up the plane in helicopter and took off. And I'm sure the horses were glad to see us leave. You know, these guys, these crazy hams, glad to get them out of town. But there's been a paradigm shift in some of these DXpeditions. I was on the VK0IR Heard Island DXpedition in 1997 and the Bhutan DXpedition in 2000. And between the 2, the average number of queues was 81,000 queues. You can see there's a few more CW queues than sideband, but pretty even overall, and 3% were digital. Well, we made about the same number of cues on Sable Island, just a few more. We made twice as many CW cues as sideband, but again, that's only 48% of the number of cues. 52% of the cues were digital. I mean, quite a paradigm shift in the DXpedition modes. And one operator, as you can see, even with one arm tied behind my back, I could operate 2 stations. And if there were 3 or 4 stations there, I'm sure I could have operated 3 or 4 stations in foxhound mode with one arm tied behind my back. And if conditions are good, you can run 5 streams, and you can make a lot of cues per hour. And of course, as propagation changes, you have to cut that stream down. And when our openings to Asia came, we cut down to 1 or 2 streams so they could copy us. We were hoping that our windows would be bigger. There were windows on every band, but just not as long as we wanted. And here you can see that we made more FT8 cues than any other mode. And surprisingly, we thought we'd have a lot more North American contacts in the log, but there were more European contacts. We had excellent, excellent conditions to Europe. Pileups just never stopped, even to the last day. But Sable is really a special place. The weather changes so often. It can be so nice outside, and in a few minutes you can be in a blizzard, at least in March, maybe not in the summer. And the horses are just wonderful. And there's so much history about that place. And we don't think we had too much trouble with DQRM because we had amps and Yagis, and the signal strengths are really good. So it would have been hard for the mentally ill types to interfere with us. But anyway, we didn't seem to have too much problem. We kept our rates up pretty good. And tongue-in-cheek, the Italians were just amazing. They would pounce on the last last station that was worked, and of course you had to move on because it became unintelligible to decode. And even with really weak signals to Asia and Oceania, the rates that we could run were just awesome. And like I said, the paths, we wish they would have been longer, but we did have good paths on every band. We even had some good contacts on the low bands. I don't think we worked any Asia on 160, but we worked quite a few on 80. And we really want to thank Parks Canada. Their team really helped us a lot get things organized, and they were just so friendly and helpful. And then the aviation people were so helpful too. And we had a lot of support from a lot of foundations and clubs. We really greatly appreciate that. That's always appreciated when you go on a DXpedition. And as we left our mark in the sand, which probably isn't there anymore, where do we go next? We're planning on this probably in August, but the Park Service gave us a window of July and August to go to St. Paul, CY9. And here's a short video of the last CY9 operation, and you'll see what it's like. And I think you can see my mouse here. There's a small island at the north end of this. This big island is totally off limits to any visitors, but we will be at a small island. You'll see it as the helicopter approaches. That's where we're going to be next year, next summer.
This actually is what I would consider the quintessential DXpedition location.
The CY9C base is on the site of an abandoned lighthouse on St. Paul Island. The island is about 3 miles long and 15 miles off the north tip of Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. It has a little history.
We don't know. We think there's maybe over 350 wrecks. 150 years of the French. After that, the British, and then now the St. Lawrence Seaway. So everything in the Great Lakes has to come by here.
It's actually the kind of location that we look for. It's uninhabited. It's isolated.
Family seals.
Italy Zulu 5, Canada Mike Lima 5-9.
Our goal here is to make as many contacts around the world with ham radio operators, and that includes hams in Japan, New Zealand, Australia.
We're effectively about 120, 125 feet above the water here, and the antenna is just so effective.
JAs are just starting to come through. here on 17. Maybe we'll get that opening, the 9, 10 o'clock opening that we had in 2016. I hope so. Everyone else stop. Italy Kilo 2, is that Hotel Kilo Nancy? Hotel Kilo Nancy?
Okay, Hotel Kilo Nancy.
What's the beauty of the FT8?
It gets through where other things can't. Rating rates of about 130 an hour.
That's 130 contacts now.
An hour, yeah.
We're basically on a rock surrounded by cliffs and water.
So really the only practical way in and out of here for us is via helicopter. It's an Airbus H120, 5 passengers, driven by a 500 shaft horsepower jet engine.
Portugal, Russia, and South Africa in 2 meters.
All off the moon.
All off the moon.
We need to, I probably told you we need to check 10 fairly early on.
I like the challenge and just working with the team, you know, the camaraderie with the team members.
So after the 2019 expedition, St. Paul's Island, weather has been well, everybody's been good, and the ghosts, I haven't been here, but I'm pretty sure nobody's been haunted. A little static on the radio, maybe.
They chased the FT8 guys off. That's what it is. It's ghosts.
How is that for a sunset?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Fantastic. It was just an unbelievable experience. Great weather, reasonable propagation, and most importantly, just a fantastic team.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, man.
Enjoyed it.
That was fun.
You're the best.
Awesome.
There you have it. That's where we're headed next August, and hopefully we'll have as good a luck as we did on Sable. We'll be a little bit closer to the peak of cycle 25, so conditions should be pretty good, barring any aurora ovals. So it's not going to be the prime time for the low bands because of the summer, but I think the upper bands will be very productive, and we might even have some, who knows, some F-skip on 6 meters to make it exciting. Any questions about Sable Island?
That sounds brilliant. Well, firstly, thank you very much indeed for that, Glenn. I'm sure there's going to be some questions, so we weren't really sure when the end was going to be, but if you're watching this at home and you've got some questions or comments or anything to make to Glenn, please put them now on either on BATC or Facebook, and we'll read them out to Glenn. Just, I know this is starting from something wrong, but the video that we've just seen, the only way to get there is a helicopter. Is that right? Did I get that right?
The cliffs are unscalable. Yeah, there's really no beach landing or anything that's a good option there. So, and it's only a 10-minute helicopter ride. So it's very quick. It's just from just a little hop. And you saw the island in the distance where I unfortunately stopped the video for a second there. But you can it's. I mean, literally, it's next door.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Far away, you just need a helicopter to get there.
So will you have any more limitation on the amount of equipment? Because before you had a plane and a helicopter. Now you're just going to have a helicopter. So I guess you could do several more trips, though. Is that the way you're going to do it?
Right. N2IEN owns the helicopter, and he's donating that his time for us. So yeah, it's just as many trips as it takes. Like I said, they're only 10 minutes to get there, so it's not the 2.5 hours in an airplane or 2 hours in a helicopter. So yeah, it's a lot easier to plan and just make trips. And one thing I cut out of that video was unfortunately, it was a pizza delivery. So they had a stack of pizzas
really
delivered to an uninhabited island.
Oh,
so
I think that's so cool.
Yeah,
that is good.
So maybe you saw that one piece of pizza in that one operating position.
Now that would my wife here, she would love that as well. Can I persuade you to go to one of these if you could get a pizza delivery? Oh no, it'll take a bit more than that. I think the other bit that I heard, not that this is right. I'm going to put a full stop there. This is not related to Tammy, but you did say that you literally had to lose weight so that you could get all of you had to lose weight so that you could get everything there and in their weight limit. Are you serious about that?
I'm serious. Yeah, we lost about. Between the 8 of us, we lost about 120 pounds. We really worked hard on that to get our weight limit down, and it was we didn't think we could do it, but we did.
Well, that is real serious commitment, and I guess it helps to be generally fit anyway to do that sort of thing. What was it like to erect the antennas and things like that? Do you have to be fairly fit? Because you said the weather really changed. A lot of the photography, the pictures that you've got there looked beautiful, but then you also said you had sleet and snow some days.
We would be putting up antennas, and then all at once it would start raining and sleeting, snowing, and we'd just go inside to warm up and warm our hands up because they would get so cold. But it just took us a day and a half to get all the antennas up. And the nice thing is they didn't have to go up very high, which was very fortunate. And again, with St. Paul coming up here, they don't have to be very high because we're on a cliff, 120 feet above the water. So if you're, to get a Yagi up to be effective, you need at least a half wavelength high, and that's not practical on a DXpedition. So some of the grounding potentials or how high you are above the water really help out a lot, getting your antennas to work and be effective.
Yeah, I mean, the accommodation there looked really good, and the way you talked about it,
that was some of the nicest accommodations I've ever had on a DXpedition. I mean, a nice warm bed, nice warm house. And, it's been there. I think that house was built in the late 30s or early 40s. And the winds would just howl outside. But that house was just as solid as a rock.
It didn't look it.
There weren't any drafts or anything. And it was really a nice place to stay. The only bad thing was eating all of the dehydrated food that we brought. Had to, the compromise. But, that's a compromise.
So what is the house?
Dehydrated stuff.
Beg your pardon. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, the dehydrated food is probably better than the MREs, which weigh a lot more.
But the steaks look nice. So, what is the house used for then when it's not being inhabited by radio amateurs trying to make thousands of contacts?
Researchers. There's a lot of research that goes on there. There's like the seal people. In the summer, there's the bird people are there. There's people that study the old shipwrecks. There's researchers in and out of there all the time.
Yeah, I haven't got any questions yet. Although we've had a message from Tom Miller, who at GXQD it says not expecting too much, but I'm spellbound with the lecture. Love the kissing horses. He says, how much hay did they charge for that?
Well, that was not one of our photographs. That was somebody else's photograph. But the horses are pretty animated, and like I said, they're very friendly. They'll come right up to you. For a wild horse, they're a little bit bigger than a pony or a very, very small horse. We have a couple quarter horses here at our place, and they're half the size of our quarter horses.
Yeah, they did look beautiful, I must say, from that. It looked to me as well like the linear that we could see in one of the pictures, which I think was a 7 megs 500 watts written on the top. That looked homemade. So was some of the equipment made optimally to be light and easy to take, and for the DXpedition, was some of it made specially for it?
Yeah, well, not made for it. Lee, WW2DX, has done a number of these DXpeditions. In fact, he was in the 2019 CY9 video you just saw. But he has his 2-meter 440 amplifiers that he takes with him for his moon bounce. They're, I think one of them is a custom made, the other is off the shelf. So they worked very well and very effectively. But he's used them quite a bit on several DXpeditions. And I hate to say it, but probably the weight of the EME equipment probably was equal to the weight of all of the HF equipment, except for the antennas, of course. But the Elecraft stuff is pretty nice and handy and compact and light.
Mm. I must tell you, I ought to tell you that we're just losing a bit of the quality of your video for some reason at the moment. We've got your sound okay, but your video is getting very choppy. Maybe your computer's doing an update or something like that. But we'll keep going, and hopefully we won't lose you completely. I mean, we haven't got any other points or questions specifically. Can I just ask you, and I've asked several people this over the years, what is the real buzz and something special about doing a DXpedition? Because they are quite a lot of work and sometimes carry quite a bit of risk, and of course quite expensive as well. So what do you, Glenn, personally get from it?
Well, there's several things. Number one, when you go on vacation, a lot of times the most exciting part is all the planning and stuff that go into it. And then you go on the trip, and then you come back and it's a letdown. You got to unpack, clean things up, and things like that. But I like the planning. It's always exciting to see what you can do with minimal equipment. The camaraderie and team selection is of paramount importance, to have a good team where everybody has everybody's back, where everybody's watching out for everybody and will take over. A couple guys got a little bug or a little sick, from time to time, and we all filled in for them and vice versa, So we just, that's part of it. And then just the thrill of the pileups. I really love to sit at the CW radio and just work. And it's a lot of fun. And then when you work a friend or somebody, a big smile comes across your face, they're smiling too. So there's several aspects that are just a lot of fun, and put it all together. It's not just additive. I think it's all multiplied together. So it's just overall a lot of fun.
Yeah, and as you said, it did seem particularly that people got on really well with each other. You've mentioned that, and also some of the other people on the video said about how important it is to get on with everybody, because you're living in very close proximity and I guess working and operating for a lot of that time. So you've all got to get on. Do you all know each other before it starts, or is it sometimes groups of relative strangers who go?
I knew everybody. A couple guys I'd never been on a DXpedition with before, so it was new. But again, I knew them, and part of the mentality is you're going to cover everybody's back. So it's good. Just like these military units that go into combat, they're best friends, forever. My dad is 98 now. He's in a nursing home, and for years he would go to his Navy ship reunion for World War II, and every year there'd be 2 or 3 that would drop out, become silent keys, but the camaraderie and that it stays on forever until you're gone. So that's. And ham radio is a people sport, just from the DXpedition team plus the people that you're working. It's all a people sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm still very, very worried about our connection, because you were still framed for quite a long time for some of that, but I've still got your audio. So I'm going to try and ask you the last question that we've got, and this is from Ralph 2M0RHT. He says that this is a bit controversial, so I'll just warn you. FT8 seems to reduce the challenge of getting through real radio. What do you think about FT8? What's your comment on that?
Well, I think it's a good mode. There's a lot of people that seem to be able to work us that couldn't otherwise, because it is a weak signal mode. But for me, you can sit there and punch a button over and over and over, to get somebody in the queue. But the real thrill for me is still the magic of radio, where you're actually at the key or at the microphone working somebody. My preference is to sit at the key and And you know, I'm not the fastest whiz in the world, but I can put in a pretty good number of people into the log. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that, I'm going to leave it there, Glenn. It's I think we've got through all the questions that we had anyway, but we're just about losing the connection with you. But thank you ever so much for doing this presentation tonight. We did see the video and the wonderful photographs and everything, and to learn about Sable Island. And of course, we wish you well with your next DXpedition, and maybe you'll come back to see us again and tell us all about that.
You bet. I'd love to.
Lovely. Well, you're booked. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you, Glenn.
All right, 73s.
73. There we are. Thank you very much to Glenn, W0GJ, for that fascinating talk. Sorry that we had those video problems at the end. I was really worried that we might lose the connection completely. But anyway, thank you very much indeed to Glenn. And that's almost it for NARC Live. Just to remind you again what's happening this week at the club. Of course, this weekend it's the RSGB convention. And if you're not going, don't forget to register to watch some of the wonderful talks and lectures they've got there and other events and interviews there. On Sunday, it's the GB2RS News at 7 o'clock on GB3MB, and Monday night it's also on GB3MB at 7:30. It's the Monday Night Net, and at 8 o'clock the 80 meter CW Net on 3.543 megahertz. And then here in a week's time, it's another NARC Live where we've got a talk by Dave KJ9I on 6 meter EME, which is Earth, Moon, Earth, and that's going to be fascinating as well. So I do hope you'll join us for that. But until then, please don't forget those mystery objects. Have a look in your kitchen drawers or your toolboxes and see about something that you can fox other people to. Send that, and of course update us with your latest news as well and your pictures. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching it. But until next week on NARC Live, from Tammy, M0TC.
Bye-bye.
And from me, David G7URP. Take care, look after yourself, and hope to see some of you at the weekend. Bye-bye.